Do you think something's going to blow up potentially?
I think it might blow up. I don't. There's nothing that's convinced me that they've got that all sorted at all.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I think we've just solved all the problems of the AFL right here, Max. So
Mate, the people getting paid millions for what we've just spoken about here. This is groundbreaking.
I saw this live, and the boys in the box were saying, "Send him to prison." So, So I think this is a week, and when you look at the footage, you can see he takes off the ground, and he doesn't need to.
And it's probably a bit late as well, isn't it?
It is quite late.
He was ducking for free kicks like I've never ever seen before, and it was horrendous, to be honest.
Yeah, so I've been sick of this for a while now in footy, and it's when a player, now this happens, every team does this, every good player does this.
You're spot on. I'm with you big time there. I completely agree, and you've revealed your sources quite easily there, mate.
Oh, well, maybe I should have kept it a bit more quiet, but there we go. So
I didn't think you'd be that open, mate. Because I love the theatre of a deliberate. Like, the umpire wounds up, deliberate, like, everyone goes berserk.
Yeah.
But
Stop. Don't go anywhere too fast. It's time to listen to a Head Over the Footy podcast.
Here we go. Round 3 is done. Gather round's coming up. Connor Kennedy, we've got a massive panellist on the show today. And welcome, Connor. How are you?
I'm great, Max. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me, and there's a lot to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And you're making your Head Over the Footy debut, mate. So great to have you on board. How have you been keeping your head over the footy?
I've been keeping it well over the footy. Don't worry. I'm all over it, mate. So we're ready to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, mate, we'll start off the show with, did you get done by an April Fool's joke?
No, I don't believe so. You know what? Yesterday was one of the only April Fools where I didn't see too much of it. So
Right.
How about yourself?
Well done. You escaped any danger.
April Fools from yourself?
I got done by one.
What happened?
It was AFL Central, that Instagram page.
Yeah.
They produce all this AFL content, and they said that the AFL is going to have a best of 3 AFL Grand Final series, and it got me badly. And they did a good job, to be fair, of pulling off the joke.
Yeah.
So
what do you think of that idea, by the way?
Well, we've spoken about it previously on Head Over the Footy.
You have?
And I like the idea. But you can go back and listen to previous episodes. But I'm a fan of the idea. That's my answer to
I
you.
like it a lot, and I wouldn't mind seeing the AFL take more of an approach similar to the NBA. I think best of 7's a little too far for AFL matches, but best of 3 could be interesting for finals matches.
Well, we just saw the NBL, Australia's basketball competition. They got a best of 5 series, which Tasmania just won. But let's get into the footy. Everything coming up on the show today, we're going to go through the top 3 stories from the round. We know that lightning struck near the MCG and it stopped play. We also know that Brisbane have had a few things going on in the media about this off-season trip. We're going to discuss it, talk about the coverage, and there's a bit to decipher in all of that. A few people from the Lions aren't happy about it. I'll leave it at that, and we'll get into it in a bit more detail later on. Then we're going to talk about the Richmond Swans game, which you were at, Connor. You were there live in a nice cushy box, I hear. So
Absolutely.
We'll go into that. Then we're going to talk about our tips. I don't think anyone had a good tipping round this week, but there was one person that we know of in our tipping competition that got a very good score, which we'll get into. And then there are a number of other things which we'll talk about as well, including our ladder predictions. We've done an interesting little piece of content. We're going to go into our ladder predictions after round 3.
Absolutely, and I think ours are going to differ a little bit, Max, so there'll be a bit to talk about.
There we go. And questions from the crowd as well. We've had a few questions come in, so we'll address them. But Connor, let's start off with the top 3 stories from the round. And starting off with Lightning, it stopped play at the MCG. The Cats and Hawks, both teams went off the ground because there was a bit of safety concerns. And this happened at 3/4 time. The players went into their huddles for 3/4 time. They went back out onto the ground. And then the officiating umpire on the boundary was like, no, you're not starting the quarter. Come back off because there's lightning. Melbourne got rain like it hasn't had before in the last fair few months. So it was raining heavily. There was a bit of lightning around. The players had to come off. And then something else happened during the break when the players were in the change rooms. And the man who's playing his 350th game, Tom Hawkins, he checked the he said, I wanted to get a look at what weather was coming our way. It certainly wasn't my phone, Hawkins told Channel 7. So he got the phone off a Cats official that was authorised to having a device, and he looked at that phone, and that's not allowed. And Connor, I'll show you the footage, mate, because here's the footage of him looking at. So he gets the phone off the Cats official, and he's pulling off a few faces. What do you think?
Oh, look, I mean, I don't know what rules the AFL technically have about how they're going to see this. Are they going to fine him or not? But to be honest, I don't have a huge problem with it. They don't really know if they're even going back on. They don't know if the game's even going to continue. And he's just an old hand who's curious at what weather's coming your way. You know, any other sport you'd want to know as well.
Yeah.
So I don't see a huge issue with it. I understand why they don't like it. And it clearly isn't his phone. You can see the official who's allowed to have the phone hand it to him.
Yeah.
So what do you think of it, Max?
Well, yeah, there's a bit to this. There's the AFL in 2021, it was revealed that 10 authorised device users are in each AFL team. So 10 Cats officials are allowed to have the phone. And yeah, as you said, one of the Cats officials handed over the phone to Hawkins, who checked the weather, according to Hawkins. Now, I don't think he had the phone on him for a while there. I'm sure he would have handed it back to the official in about the space of 15 seconds. The footage that was on broadcast cut that off. We don't know how long he had the phone in his hand, but it looked like he was soon going to pass it back to him. But Collingwood, they'll fine $20,000 after Jordan De Goey and Jeremy Howe retrieved their phones in the rooms during a game, and this was a few years ago. And they were on their phones because they both the players suffered the match-ending injuries, so they got injured and they wanted to alert their families and friends about the extent of their injuries. Now that's not allowed, even though that's a fair reason to be talking to your family. You've been injured, there's concerns. But this is the AFL's biggest concern about it all, is the threat of mobile phones during games centres around the possibility of match fixing, because sensitive information could be fed to the outside world and used for gambling purposes. So that's the whole issue around this, and that's why Collingwood got a $20,000 fine for what De Goey and Jeremy Howe did. So a fine is probably expected here for Hawkins, but that was interesting, and the Cats stuff was also interesting, coming off, and the Hawks. But yeah,
absolutely. And to talk a little bit more about the weather, do you know how long it had to go on for them to just call the match? What's the rule there?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, and I was trying to find out how long the game would have to be stopped for them to call off the game. And yeah, that's something that is interesting, because if it does, there is a certain amount of time. You're right. So maybe Nathan, our man in the background here, can find that one out for us. But I was trying to find that out before the show and couldn't. But anyway, it was an interesting one. And the day before, you were at the Swans game, which we'll get into. But before we get into that, the Brisbane Lions. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Lions and their off-season trip bonanza, and they went to Las Vegas in the US. And Charlie Gill, right, he called it. He said they would be broken if they lost to the Pies, and it's looking that way with the coverage they're getting in the media. And yeah, he said they'd be broken if they lost to the Collingwood last Thursday. And from all the reports we're seeing, Charlie Gill is right, but the media have painted a bit of a picture here that's probably not representative of actually what's going on. Harris Andrew, he has shot down reports of the playing group becoming fractured. He says the bond is as strong as ever. And the footy boss, Danny Daly, he confirmed the same thing as well. But what happened was they were having their trip. They've got a WhatsApp group, and the WhatsApp group got put onto iCloud. So then one of the person that put the WhatsApp group to iCloud, his partner had access to the messages. And that's what's caused a bit of a stir. Some of the partners weren't happy with what was going on that trip, according to these reports. But the Brisbane players are saying that there's nothing to it. It hasn't affected their season. And Tom Morris from Channel 9, he actually reported last night that they're thinking of boycotting the Herald Sun because of their reporting of the incident. So, it's a bit of an interesting one. And there was a similar thing, or not similar, but there was a separate incident that happened at the Swans. But yeah, what have you caught a bit of this?
Yeah, I've caught a bit of wind of this, and look, I think it's always tough in these situations because you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, on one hand, no matter what, Harris Andrews and Danny Daly are going to deny what's going on, and of course they're going to say the bond is still strong, because they're not going to say, yeah, look, we're really struggling, the playing group's not getting on well, and so they're never going to admit to it. But on the other hand, they might be going well. Yeah. Who knows? You don't know, but you have to look at their 0-4 start now and go, they're in a bit of trouble. And clearly something's going on. This isn't the team that we saw in the grand final last year. You know, they've lost twice at home now. So
and they didn't lose at home once last year.
Yeah, that's right.
So something's going wrong, but it might not be that. But they're denying it. But you're right. They're not gonna say it had an effect on us, are they?
Yeah,
even if it did.
You can see it from both points of view. I mean, of course, the Brisbane group is going to deny it, and the media also, they love to blow things up as well. So who knows what's really going on behind the scenes? It's an interesting story to watch.
Well, I think I'm trusting Brisbane here because the footy boss, Danny Daly, he didn't want to go into details and whatever because it's personal circumstances. But on Monday, he came out and he had enough of it. He was like, mate, I'm the footy boss of the club, Lions. I rang the captains, Harris Andrews, and Lachie Neale is the other co-captain. And the phone call lasted about 30 seconds. And they're like, mate, Lachie Neale and Harris Andrews were both like, there's nothing going on. And then the phone call ended at that. So I trust what they're saying and I take their word for it. And I think the way the media, they like to blow it up and make it a big thing because people,
of course. And would we be talking about it as much if Brisbane were 4-0 instead of 0-4?
It would be exactly. It'd be nothing, would it? Like it'd barely be a story.
Yeah. So who
knows? And they're on 3. Just to correct you there.
0-3. Sorry. Yeah, they had the bye. That's right. 0-3. Yes.
But they're as you said, it's an interesting situation. But I think they'll bounce back, Brisbane. But there's got to be questions asked because they haven't won at the Gabba, as we've mentioned. Moving on now to Richmond and the Swans game. Richmond pulled off a massive upset. It was a good contest and good to see Richmond get the win here. They're 1-3 now, and Tom Lynch, he's out for up to 2 months. Unfortunately, he's needing a hamstring tendon surgery, and Noel Bolter is out, so they're going to be without 2 of their tools. But a great win for Richmond. And Connor, you were at the game. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I was at the game, Max, and you actually predicted Richmond to win. And look, I'm a Swans supporter myself. There's a lot I made of the game. To be honest, that's the worst I've seen us play in a long, long time. Now, some of that's due to Richmond's pressure, but, you said it was a good game. It wasn't really a good game to watch.
Right.
In the second half, I couldn't really watch. Our disposal efficiency had to be under 50%. We just could not hit a target to save our lives. And one of the guys I was sitting with said, wow, that was the worst we've played in a long time, and we still only lost by 5 points. Yeah. So, look, as a Swan supporter, I didn't feel like we deserved to win the game. And I was quite ashamed of how we'd played, to be honest. I don't know what happened. We just could not hit a target. Everything else was all right. But everyone was off in terms of their disposal efficiency. But I'm still very hopeful for the season. And there's a few reasons for that. The first is, Dane Rampy, which we can't confirm the extent of the injury, but he did his hamstring during the game and he came off. Yep. And so he's obviously, people don't talk about him as much, but he's our most important defender. And he was our co-captain up until very, very recently. And so that's a big loss for us. We're still missing Callum Mills, our actual captain, Luke Parker, who was last year's co-captain as well, and Taylor Adams, our new recruit.
Yeah.
So we're missing 4 of our best players there.
That's a lot of good players out there.
A lot of good players, and we had a debutant as well. Got some very, very young players. And so, look, I'm not going to read too much into this. I think, to play that badly and still only lose by 5 points away from home and be missing all of our players, it's no big deal for the Swans.
Yeah, that's a good point. The only thing I will mention, though, is you guys have been playing good in the first few rounds and you've had the same players out, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. Although we did lose Rampy during the match.
What quarter was it?
I'm not sure.
Early or late?
I'm not actually sure because I was at the game, so I didn't hear until
sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, has it got something to do with the venue, though, Connor? Sydney and the MCG, did they struggle there? I know Sydney's pretty good at Marvel.
Well, we beat Collingwood at the MCG 2 weeks ago in a huge game. Before Collingwood were 0-1 at this stage.
Yeah.
And that was a huge
so
game.
There's no, you're
and that was a
denying
big
it.
upset. So I don't think we struggle at the MCG at all. No.
Yeah. Now, just touching on the game once more, was it a bad game if you're a Richmond supporter, or was it just bad? Did they play good footy?
Well, look,
or were they also poor? Yeah.
I think Richmond's, obviously they're going to be happy, the supporters, because they get their first win against the team who was probably premiership favourites up until this round.
Yeah.
So, of course they're happy, but I wasn't too impressed, really, with Richmond. They were missing a lot of targets as well. It was a lot of just messy footy,
Sometimes
to be honest.
you got to win messy.
So, yeah, that's right. It was quite a messy game, and it wasn't good footy to watch. So.
Yeah. Well, Noah Bolter, as we mentioned, Richmond, they're going to be struggling for their 12s. Noah Bolter injured his knee in the final moments and will miss the next 2 games. And the club's got a bye as well, so he might be back after those 3 weeks. But they're in trouble. Josh Gibcus also injured his ACL earlier in the season, so that's another tall that's out. So Ruckman, Sam Naismith, he might come back in. And Jacob Kaczynski as well. He's more than likely to come back into the side. So Lynch is a big out. They might struggle over the next few weeks. And Liam Baker, we'll just touch on this lastly. He got a week for rough conduct for running back with the flight and jumping to mark the ball, taking his eye off the ball in the last minute and making contact with Lewis Malikan's head. Now, the impact of this is going to decide whether he gets a week or not. So it will be deemed as careless and not intentional but careless. The medium and low impact is probably the question that needs to be answered here. If it's low impact, he got him in the head, so it'll probably end up being a fine. But if it's medium impact, and because he got him in the head, it'll be a 1 week ban there. So, Connor, I'll get your thoughts on this. He went to run back with the flight, made contact with his head. I'll just get the video up now. What did you make of this? Did you reckon it's worth a week?
I saw this live, and the boys in the box were saying send him to prison. So, So I think this is a week. And when you look at the footage, you can see he takes off the ground, and he doesn't need to in that situation.
Yeah.
So, there was no reason to jump there.
And it's probably a bit late as well, isn't it?
It is quite late. So I think for sure he's gone for a week.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now that he was just a bit late, if he was there a bit earlier, he probably wouldn't have got him high and all that. So, and obviously, look at the reaction from the Sydney players; they were all over him. So,
yeah, exactly.
I think that should be a week. No issues there, and he has. I think he has been given a week with rough conduct, and they might appeal it, but we'll find out. Anyway, moving on now to the tips for the round. And the Morts Meets tipster of the round this week is Harriet Shelton 1, who tipped a perfect 8 out of 8. Unbelievable. The next best in the competition of more than 80 in that head over the footy tipping competition. The next best was 6, which only 3 people got. And Harriet managed to get a perfect score. Quite unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, I just can't believe it. I'm lost for words, really, at getting 8 out of 8 this round. I mean, there were quite a few upsets. There were probably 4 or 5 upsets.
Yeah.
Half the matches in the round were upsets. So that's a stellar effort from Harriet.
Yeah, big time. So she'll win $10. And to claim the prize, you got to message the Head Over the Footy Instagram or Facebook page before the start of Gather Round. So before the start of the next round, which is Gather Round this week, you must get in contact before to claim that prize. Now, the overall leader of the competition is Crows Clowns, which I believe is Henry Waters. And he's the sole leader on 22 now. 8 people are on 21. And last week's leader, the Rotunda, which is Charlie Gill, he is also on 21 as well.
And so am I, by the way.
You're one of the 8.
Yep, I'm sitting pretty in 6th spot, and I actually just checked the rankings, Max. You're down at 55. So,
we don't talk about that, mate.
I'm just wondering what's happened to you this season.
Oh, look, I tipped Collingwood the first 3 rounds. So what am I on? Am I on 17 or something?
I think
I'm on 17.
Yeah.
So if I didn't tip Collingwood the first 3 rounds, I would have been on 20 already. So, and then this week, guess who I tipped out of Brisbane and Collingwood?
You tipped Brisbane. Yeah.
Tipped Brisbane. And there you go. The first 4 games, Collingwood screwed me over.
Yeah, well, that's what's hard about tipping your own team, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Did you tip Brisbane or Collingwood?
I tipped Brisbane.
Yeah,
so...
Nathan?
I actually tipped Brisbane by about 20.
There we
20
go.
odds, so I was really off. But,
Yeah.
you'd think they'd get it done down in the Gabba as well, especially after last season's grand final. They'd want that more, but...
Yeah,
Didn't go their way.
exactly. Well, that's what Charlie Gill was saying
Exactly
on last
right.
Wednesday's show. He was saying, they'd be broken, which, for them not to get the win there was surprising. And what about in the first, did any of you tip Collingwood in the first 3 rounds? Did you guys tip against Collingwood at all?
I tipped against Collingwood. I tipped GWS first round, and I tipped Sydney second round.
There you go. So you've done well there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was both Collingwood as well. So I was all for Collingwood getting that hot start as well.
Yeah.
But the interesting question, Max, is at what point do you hop off Brisbane's bandwagon in the tipping? Because they've now lost twice at home.
Well, who have they got next? We'll check. But we will get into our tipping on Wednesday's show as well. There's plenty to discuss there, and we're going to be going through all our tips. So stay tuned for Wednesday's show where we go through all the tips. You'll be able to find it all there. But Brisbane have got North Melbourne. So
they've got North
You're not going to
Melbourne,
jump off Brisbane now, are you?
No, you're not going to jump off them in that match. But, they've got, Melbourne at home the next week?
Yeah.
So,
jump off them then.
You jump off them then. Yeah, you're rating Melbourne highly this season, aren't you?
I am, mate. I am. And we'll get into our ladder predictions then. But, yes, that's tipping for this round 3.